Nearly 9 months ago, an oil rig owned by British Petroleum exploded off the U.S. coast of Louisiana in the Gulf of Mexico, causing the largest offshore oil spill in the nation's history. Joining us in the studio to discuss a new report on the U.S. oil industry is VOA correspondent Carolyn Presuitti. Carolyn, go ahead.
Vincent, you know, this week I sat down with the two co-chairs of that report, and what they said to me was incredible. It's a scathing report, and it carries a frightening global conclusion that a spill like this will happen again unless major changes are made.
The oil spill killed 11 men.
It's hard knowing that he's not ever going to be here with us, you know, and our lives will never be the same again.
It spewed more than 4 million barrels of oil into the Gulf. It decimated a billion-dollar fishing industry.
We want to shrimp. Get the oil out of here and let us shrimp.
A presidential commission investigating the causes placed the blame with the 3 companies connected to the oil well. Co-chair William Riley issued a global warning.
We have evidence to suggest that Halliburton, Transocean, and BP, all of which operate throughout the world and virtually all the oceans, they all made serious mistakes on the night of April 20th that should cause those who work with them to be very careful.
Riley and co-chair Bob Graham sat down for an interview with VOA the day before releasing their report. They were blunt in their assessment of the entire oil industry. Without change, they say it could wither, similar to nuclear energy following the 3 Mile Island incident in 1979. Co-chair Bob Graham.
I was surprised to learn that the industry itself was so complacent with its commitment to safety. I was also surprised to learn just how much more risky it is to be drilling at 5,000 or 10,000 feet than it is to be drilling at 500 feet.
Graham says more oversight is needed for deepwater drilling as it spreads across the globe, with plans to drill off Brazil, Mexico, Cuba, and increased demand for oil by India and China. The report says BP, Halliburton, and Transocean cut costs and took shortcuts, and that increased the risk of a blowout at the well. It singles out a bad design, test flaws, and inattention to blowout warnings. It also faults the companies for ineffective response once the disaster started. Now here's what BP Vice President David Rainey said about the spill on April 21st, the day after it happened.
If there is any pollution at the moment, we believe it is minor pollution.
But here's how BP responded Tuesday to the report. We support the Commission's efforts to strengthen industry-wide safety practices. In its statement to VOA, Transocean said it had followed procedures directed by BP and approved by federal regulators. Halliburton disputes the Commission's findings about how the well was sealed. The Commission suggests 80% of the fines and penalties imposed on the companies, estimated to be in the double-digit millions of dollars, goes toward restoration of the Gulf. It also calls for more government regulations to prevent a recurrence of the disaster. The panel co-chairs say there is an imbalance between the revenue brought in by oil and the regulations set up to monitor it. Again, Riley.
There has to be some deduction from these huge multi-billion-dollar lease amounts and royalty amounts to actually support the apparatus that keeps it all honest, that makes it all protective. That has not, frankly, been our history, and it has not been the history of many countries.
But the dominant mood now in the House of Representatives is smaller government, fewer regulations. Now, when I pointed that out to the two co-chairs, they agreed, but they said that they hope legislators can get beyond that they can remember the extent of the disaster, they can make an exception, and they can accept their recommendations. Vincent?
Good job there, Caroline.
Thank you.
But a question now, did the Commission recommend any criminal charges to be filed against any countries?
No, they didn't, and the only reason for that is because they weren't asked to look at the criminal issues. That's up to the Justice Department, and so we are expecting some criminal charges to be announced soon, but nothing as of yet.
And briefly, did they say anything at all about some of the penalties going to pay for liabilities?
Yes, 80% of the penalties will go toward the restoration of the Gulf, but also they're thinking about raising the liability cap. That would be the cap of $75 million. They call that inadequate, and they hope that that recommendation is accepted.
Thank you very much,
sure.
Caroline. We hope
My
to
pleasure.
have you again here when you have such a fabulous story to share with us.
Thank you.